long-lasting, standing between you and the fun and the drinks and the beers and everything. So yeah, I'm going to talk about OKRs, which is something we heard from me and the other people here. So a few words about me and a bunch of logos on this slide. So I've been in product management for something like 15 years. What I do now is I'm a product manager consultant, so I help companies, big and small, doing product management better. And yeah, besides that, I'm involved in, I don't know, many other things around product management, such as education, between Prague University of Economics, the School of Business at Berkeley, created the product management community, or working with accelerator startups, stuff like that. So if you want to hear more, you can reach out later. So OKRs. So the key thing of OKRs is that this meetup is actually called Trends in Product Management. So what we heard from the other talks is that there are actually two major trends in product management today. One is continuous product discovery and research, and the second is OKRs. And these two things actually go hand in hand. And who is actually using today OKRs at work? Okay, not enough people. So, by the way, there are even my students here tonight, because I thought it would be actually good for them to listen to the talks of the others. And I force them to use OKRs too. So you should. And OKRs are not just for the tech world, as some of the other talks we heard today. OKRs are for really, literally any time of business. So it's a very simple framework that helps you setting objectives and staying on track with the objectives. And we heard that in Mika's talk, in Amit's talk, trying to define where the aim for your impact is. So the problem with OKRs is that as every simple framework is very simple. So I could argue, I don't know, even Scrum is actually very simple. You just break your development in chunks of 1 week, 2 weeks, whatever it is. 10 minutes stand up every day and you're done. But unfortunately, teams go crazy with that, and it doesn't work in all the cases, and you actually have to fine-tune it for your own business. So OKRs is quite similar to that. It defines just a few simple rules, but then it's hard to actually be done properly in the practice. So essentially, for those of you who really never tried it, I'm not actually going to explain the framework today, but for you that never heard about it before, essentially you set a bunch of objectives, which is what you actually want to achieve, where you want to be, and key results related to those objectives, which essentially means how do you know you're actually working towards that objective? How do you know you're getting there? And OKRs are hierarchical. So we've seen, for instance, in Mika's talk, they have their own structure of OKRs at Pipedrive, and every company, depending on their organizational architecture, is going to have to actually implement their own structure for OKRs. But my favorite one, which we can use as a very simple rule, is that there is some company OKRs, at least for simplifying the talk for today, and some product OKRs. And then, of course, it can be more complicated because you can have platforms, or besides the mission OKRs, you can have like some intermediate levels. And of course, there can be individual OKRs and individual tasks that we can track for ourselves. So when it comes down to product management, OKR comes into play in 3 dimensions. One, and it's probably the most important, is strategy. I remember Mika's word, he said, first of all, you need to have a company strategy, because that will actually guide you, right? And even in Amit's words, if we listen to his talk before, it's a matter of understanding what is your global performance indicator and how you want to actually pick that to be actually enough. And so the first thing is you need to have a strategy. You need to have a vision. And unfortunately, even if I got asked many times, hey, what is the good way to define a strategy? What's the good way to define a vision? We'll just get for granted for today that you have a strategy, that you have a vision. And as an example, for instance, I don't know, WhatsApp vision is to replace the SMS text messages, right? Or, I don't know, Dropbox strategy and vision is to actually replace hard drives. But then, how do you get to that vision, right? You need to change the world, we get it, but probably you want to do that 1% at a time. And so what you do is you can set your objectives and your key results for a time horizon. And the time horizon very commonly is 1 year and then 1 quarter, because usually companies operate in quarter, but not necessarily. For instance, in the case of a mission, the mission doesn't have a time span related to a quarter, so in Mikael's picture we would have something, some OKRs that span 2 different quarters. That's also fine. Whatever works for you. And so, where do we start, right? If I am Dropbox and I want to replace hard drives, I'll probably start with acquiring users, right? So my goals would be to grow my market share in the beginning rather than to engage users. So in the beginning you would have something like quarterly goals to say, hey, we need more users. Why? Because you have yearly goals that say, hey, we need more users. And essentially, that could translate, for instance, into a referral bonus feature, right? Oh, send this link to a couple of friends to install Dropbox, and you're going to get a couple of extra megabytes for your Dropbox for free. And then, after a couple of years, when that is already in place, when we have enough users, then maybe we need to engage users, right? So, as a Dropbox, we could have like more features related to actually, I don't know, document management, version management, and so on and so forth, because we want users to use that. So, first of all, you need to have a strategy, and then you need to break it down. Essentially, it's as simple as if I have a vision, if I have a strategy, first of all, I want to identify as a company, what can we do this year or this quarter to make a step towards that vision, to make a step towards the strategy. Yeah, and that's pretty much what I just talked about. And that is, by the way, that's not easy, okay? Whether the company is small or big, it's always actually a challenge to find a good strategy in place, and even for management, because this process is for sure top-down, or starts at least top-down, even for management to actually try to agree sometimes on what are the objectives we want to tackle this specific year, what are the objectives we want to tackle this specific quarter. But assuming you've done that, there's another alignment. And OKRs is extremely powerful as alignment. I work with companies with tens of product teams, or with startups which are actually smaller. And in all cases, the key issue is a communication issue, which, when it comes down to execution, translates into some of the teams not working towards the company objectives. Why? Well, maybe because nobody actually bothered communicating between top management and teams and actually aligned company objectives to company strategy and teams and product objectives to company objectives. So the things must be actually hierarchical, and as you may understand, it actually requires a lot of communication for that to happen. So an example to actually have a strategy aligned with the execution, if you think at Uber, you can think, hey, we want to grow our revenue. Uber's revenue is approximately 10 billion per quarter. We want to grow it to 15 billion. Okay? How do we do that? So first of all, how do we get that? So first of all, we want to grow the app revenue for passenger by 20%. And then we want to acquire new users. So if we get that, we can assume we're actually working towards the goal of hitting 15 million per quarter. And if I am one of the product teams in the Uber's passenger app, what I can say is essentially, how does my team, how can I as a team contribute, or how can we as a team contribute to achieving that goal? And in that case, say we launch the ride-sharing feature, which is not common in Europe, but it is in the US and South America, for instance, which is called Uber Pool. And the key results of the feature are going to actually be different from the key results of the company for the quarter. But they will contribute into moving that global performance indicator that the company identified as the strategic goal and strategic target for this quarter. In this case, I want to increase the average number of rides per week a user does. In addition to that, I may want to increase the average monthly spend per user. And as a bonus to that, I can say that because I'm launching a new feature, I would like to get a target for 100K monthly active users that are actually utilizing my new feature for Lacche. So that's a way that specific team aligns to the company goal. That can be many other teams in Uber that actually do other stuff or try to launch different features, still working towards the revenue goal. And at task level, well, at the task level, in this case, I put like Sarah Leon, who are an engineer, UX designer there, but individual OKRs are getting less and less popular. Okay, this is just an example. They may work for you. I usually put them optional. They may not work for you. It doesn't really matter. You can usually at this task level, you will likely find, for instance, a team, because actually a product team sometimes is made of multiple agile engineering teams with just one product manager in some cases. So in this case, you may see a bunch of people or a group of people or a group or a dynamic feature team. It really doesn't matter. But whatever they do, they ask themselves the question, hey, are we actually contributing with the task we are planning for ourselves, which we don't put in OKRs, because OKRs is it's actually, the name suggests it's objectives and key results. It's not that like objectives and everything we plan on doing to achieve them. It's just the key results we put there. And so what you have there is that actually teams do a bunch of stuff on a daily basis, including the firefighting Amit was talking about. And the question is, if I'm looking at my product OKRs for my team, whatever I'm planning to do today, is it contributing to that, or it's just firefighting? So that's one way of seeing it. And again, not necessarily at an individual level, but that could be at a team level as well. And then, of course, what happens, and that's also good practice, is to avoid really thinking that when you write down something, when you communicate something in terms of objectives, in terms of key results to the whole organization, because usually these things are announced to the whole organization, then, okay, it's written in stone, therefore we need to actually get there. Well, we live in an agile world and we cannot predict the future. So not necessarily you're actually going to get there. And if you don't get there, what happens is, yes, you can be stuck sometimes towards the end of the quarter and not achieving your goals. And you need to ask yourself the question, whether it's a quarter or any other time horizon you set, is it still worth it to continue with that objective, or shall I update it? So is my work during this time period showing that actually that thing is unreachable, or the target of having 15 billion per quarter, or I don't know what it is, 60 billion per year is unreachable this year? Shall I move the target? So you can actually update things as you go. But of course, the key part is still communicating and retrospecting with the teams and understanding exactly why. So that's the first thing, OKRs and strategy. And then there are two things that OKRs can help you with as a product manager and as a product team. And one of them is the roadmap. So when you work with roadmaps, so assuming that you've done this beautiful job of setting objectives, actually setting key results, measuring somehow your product outcomes. Then the question is, will you still end up with just a feature factory roadmap like this one? Will you still be a mercenary that is in a meets word that still just wants to build feature after feature? Or actually, even worse, is your boss demanding or your business stakeholder demanding that you still just feature factor stuff? Well, the answer is no, of course. But then, how do you put there a roadmap in a way that makes more sense? Is by aligning those time horizons. In this case, they're quarters, okay? It doesn't really matter. They could be now, later, and future, whatever, months, whatever it is for you. 3, 6, 9 months, it doesn't really matter. But then once you have objectives, those features, which by the way, I don't know, maybe Paolo or somebody else mentioned, I love to have features in the roadmap. They could be problems and not features. For me, they're just deliverables. Whatever the team is delivering, is that, why is the team working on that? Why the team is planning on delivering that? And the answer should be, in order to hit that objective, and that's the way we're going to measure. So putting your OKRs at least next to the roadmap, plus there are trends, since this is trends in product management, the Meetup, there are trends of even replacing the roadmap altogether with OKRs, and maybe with prototypes. But if you want to keep the roadmap, be my guest, just make sure that the roadmap is actually aligned to your OKRs. And last but not least, I'll try to make it as short as I can, is the OKRs and the discovery part. So we heard a lot today about product discovery. Product discovery essentially means I want to find out something I don't know as a product manager, something that can help me creating a better product for my business. And well, essentially there are 3 things you can find out. Either a new problem, you discover a new problem, as everybody mentioned today, or you validate an existing problem, or you validate a solution for that problem. And that's pretty much what we've seen today, okay? You make sure you plan only what you have discovered, not just what came up out of an opinion battle. Hey, shall we put the button up or the button in the bottom right corner? That doesn't make sense. You discover something with your users, and you plan only that. And then you build only what you planned. Fair enough. Or you change the plan accordingly. And then you measure what you build. This is what we're seeing today. But, and somebody has mentioned it in the beginning, who actually informs the discovery? Are we trying to solve everybody's problem? Because that could be a problem itself. So there's not the right answer to that, but there are multiple options. So first of all, ideas, as usually is, can inform discovery. And in that case, who has ideas? Well, product managers have ideas, customers have ideas, customer-facing roles like salespeople or customer success / support people have a lot of ideas. Of course, product researchers, they will come up with a lot of ideas. Engineers have ideas on how to improve the product. Fair enough. And that's good. It's good that actually we run those ideas, which can be, I'm using the word idea here, but just replace it with problem or solution. We run that past validation, we run that past discovery. Another way to do it is to actually start from an objective. We start with a goal. And I forgot the name, Kava, the first guy we talked today. Kava. And he told about design sprints. So the first thing in design sprints is you set the goal. And then you try to do all the sprint trying to achieve that goal. And that's another way to do it. Or you can mix the approaches and be selective. And you have a bunch of ideas, you run them past your objectives, and actually you end up with just selected ideas that are those that will contribute eventually to helping achieving your goals. So in this case, you're not trying to solve everybody's problem, but you're trying just to solve those problems that are valuable to your objectives, that are valuable to your business, however you set actually your business KPIs, which could be, I want to make more money, I want to acquire more users, I want to engage my customers, whatever it is. And an example of that could be, again, with the example of Uber. I can run some research, talking to passengers, talking to drivers, and I'm going to come up with some findings. Again, this is a very, very simplified example. But the question is that for sure passengers will love us to solve all these problems. For sure drivers will love to get all these problems solved. But is it worthy for us to actually solve them all? Or some of them will actually just take our time without making us work toward our objective. And well, if I take the OKRs we said before for our team in Uber, I see that just the first 3 findings in our user research actually contribute to increasing the number of rides, or increasing the spend, or actually increasing the feature usage for our new rideshare app, rideshare feature. Why? Well, because actually the first one, there's a typo, it's a driver, it's not a passenger. So if there is no way for me to pick up multiple passengers, if I'm a driver, then probably that feature wouldn't work, because it's a ride-sharing feature. And the driver will actually make less money, so would be not actually motivated. And there is another finding about the driver not making less money. In this case, it's the 4th one. Overall, if I'm driving with Uber for a whole month, not making enough money. Shall we solve that problem now? Well, we might be tempted in doing that. But probably we shouldn't, because our goal, in this case, there's just a single objective, for example, our goal is different from that. Shall we solve the problem that passengers who like a quiet environment to actually do work, especially when they commute or when they move from one side to another in a working day? Well, it might be tempting to do so, but still, again, it wouldn't contribute to our overall objective. So what OKRs help you in this case is actually selecting only those ideas or problems or features that actually contribute to achieving the end goal. And then there is another bonus section on the way that OKRs can possibly fail, but probably I have just 1 minute for that, right? So very briefly, the key thing is usually companies with or without OKRs, they put their head in the sand, and management tends to avoid answering the question, shall we set a strategy, shall we define goals and stick to those objectives? Similar to amidst principles, shall we define a principle and follow that? Usually it's much more comfortable to keep it a little bit blurred. Yeah, it's in our head, we have the vision, we have the strategy, nobody has seen it, nobody has been communicating that, and nobody has actually communicated back to management what our team will do to try to contribute to achieving the strategy. So that's the first thing. Second thing is consistency. So yeah, you can have beautifully set OKRs in the beginning of the quarter. It's a lot of overhead. You've been working as a whole company, as a whole team for actually days to set that one up. But nobody follows them. And what's the best way to follow them is as a team, we sort of gather on a weekly basis, and we look at the work we've done, and we ask ourselves, is the work we've done contributing to those objectives? To the objective we ourselves have set for us, or not? Because if the answer is no, then there are only two possible solutions. Either you go back on track and you try as a team to actually work towards what's important instead of firefighting or doing other ideas, interesting but not valuable when it comes down to this objective, or you update the goal. Yeah, so I'm going to skip the others and maybe start taking a couple of questions.
So does anyone have any questions?
What was the previous slide?
So the previous slide is this one.
Oh, sorry.
Let's imagine you're not in a perfect situation and you are in the company when you can't define the OKRs. You are okay, you are in the emerging strategy. You just explore that you're good at something. What would you do as a product management?
So if I get the question correctly, it's about experimenting, or?
For instance, you have never planned to be good at, serving food. For instance, you are, I don't know, providing some expertise in facility management, whatever, and you just randomly are really good at serving food. What would you do as product management?
So yeah, that's a good question. So sometimes we find ourselves, and even as a team, we have some needs which we can utilize for some reason, right? For instance, our team is good at artificial intelligence, machine learning, okay? And we can start hacking something together to say, hey, how we can actually help Pipedrive users with whatever machine learning or the AI mambo jumbo. Well, that's tempting again, because that's our comfort zone. That's what we do. But it's like we are shooting without taking an aim. So that's too easy. It might lead to some good outcome, but that could be just random. So in general, it's also good to start from what we got, but just before that, we should step back for a second and try to figure out what are we trying to achieve. Even not what problem are we trying to solve, but even what outcome, what business outcome we would like to achieve. That's a good thing. And then we can even experiment on random problems, experiment on random solutions, or random stacks of technology we have at our disposal. But afterwards, it will be still useful to double check if whatever we tried or experimented or hacked together contributes to that objective or not. Because that's an opportunity for either changing the objective or changing what we are doing.
We will share the time because I already asked the question. So, but anyway, so to make it fast, what do you think about setting up the OKRs to be like 80% of what you actually? So, like, you want to be kind of in the flow zone. You don't want to like have the goal to like low to just be sure that you will make it. And on the other hand, you don't want to have it too like ambitious, so it doesn't paralyze you. Like, yeah, we can do that anyway. So like you try to be in this like 60 to 80%, like where you so you set the goal to actually like let's say like to 100%. If 80 was that, what do you think that actually is doable? What do you think about that?
So again, we haven't discussed the framework, but what it refers to is the sweet spot of trying to hit a key result, which is around, or an objective, which is around 70% in the OKR framework. Why so? Why 70% and not 100%? So 70% is considered to be a success because those OKRs are usually set in a way that they are meant to be stretch goals. So still achievable, but only achievable in sort of ideal conditions, realistically ideal conditions. And that's why if everything goes right, or better, if nothing goes wrong, we're gonna hit 100%, but if we hit 100% too many times, it means we were setting too comfortable goals for ourselves. So the goal should be ambitious, yes, should be stretch goals, and there's nothing bad with not achieving a key result or an objective at all. For instance, you can fail at an objective altogether, and that's still going to be a success because you proved that something wasn't actually feasible. If Uber had as one of the objectives, try to make a teleport work, after a quarter, engineers may try, may get 0 on that key result, but they would still prove the point to management that that's not possible.
Okay, I just wanted to ask, you said that the people in the team should set their OKRs themselves to better to align with it. Is it better to do top-down decisions from the top management to the bottom to set the OKRs, or is it better for the individuals to set their OKRs on the bottom level and somehow then push that up? Because I know that the people down usually don't know the strategy of the whole company, but when something comes from the top, they are not getting aligned with it.
So OKR is not a new concept, okay? Measuring what you do. So a gentleman called Pipedrive, came up in the 60s on the thing of management by objectives. Okay, let's set an objective and let's manage, still top-down, fully top-down, the company with that. At least we measure something. That was still better than not measuring. And then Andy Grove from Intel, he came up with OKRs. Why? Because the approach should be neither one or the other, but actually both. So let's have management, first of all, showing us the direction they would like to get to, which would be already a big step in advance compared to many companies I talk to. And then let's actually have teams from the bottom up with their creativity come up with ideas on how we can help management achieve their objectives, how we can help the company achieve their objectives. And after that, there's even a finalization approach in which management, by collecting all the inputs from the teams, can even slightly adjust their objectives based on all the inputs together, because usually teams people are as smart as managers. They shouldn't be different.
Okay, let's do one more question behind you, and then we can follow up with the rest of the question in the networking session.
Thank you. So my question is, from the moment you are setting up the OKRs for the quarter, can they be adjustable during the quarter, or should they even be adjustable during the quarter? And what is the moment you can see that OKR is that and stop carrying on to that OKRs?
Yeah, that's a slide. Thank you, Paolo, for letting me show that one.
Yes.
So that's a slide in one show. So the thing is that ideally you wouldn't do that. So imagine, let's get a concrete example. Let's say that you want to hit more engagement in your app, okay? Your WhatsApp or your Instagram, you want to have more engagement, you come up with stories, okay? Bingo. Now 500 million people use stories, biggest marketing channel today. But say that halfway through the quarter, you're not that successful. What you want to do? You want to drop the ball or you want to keep trying? Actually, it's up to you. If you already know that you're not going to move forward, if you're already actually, what I see with many teams is that they find themselves at doing something they believe is extremely important. And when managers go there and say, hey, guys, this is actually not matching the contract. This is not matching what we defined we wanted to do, what you defined you wanted to do as a team in the beginning of the quarter. If they have arguments to say why that is more important and why that still contributes to the company's overall objectives, then there's nothing bad in updating the thing, because we identify that objective and we kill it. But usually it's better to try at least until the time horizon, at least until the goal you set for yourself. The rule is do what makes sense, but in general, most of the times you try to hit the goal. You try to work hard and hit the goal. Cool.
All right.
Thank you very much.